All praises to the Most High, Yahweh Ba'ashem and Hawashai, Ba'ashem Racha Kodash. Double honors to the elder apostles and elder bishops of Great Millstone who rule well. Peace and salutations to the hopeful elect, scattered throughout the four corners of this earth, laboring in his truth in all sincerity. Isaiah 3 and 5 in the NLT. People will oppress each other, man against man, neighbor against neighbor. Young people will insult their elders, and vulgar people will sneer at the honorable. Before I get started, I'm going to put out a disclaimer. The next 15 seconds or the next few seconds of this video will be muted to avoid copyright strikes on my channel. This is not a moment of silence for the 2/3. Even though those 15 seconds were muted, you can already tell from the way she's dressed and her mannerisms that there was nothing righteous or uplifting about what she was saying. Complete debauchery. And let's look at that word debauchery and to see some examples of what it means actually. Some examples of debauchery include unrestrained sexual activity, habitual drunkenness, drug abuse, reckless partying, and other forms of excessive indulgence, and sensual or immoral pleasures, often involving a complete lack of inhibition or self-control. To sum all that up in one word, wickedness, with a capital wickedness. In Babylon, sex and violence sells. It's the reason why the most degenerate stuff is put in front of you constantly here. And we know that Babylon means confusion. And everyone in that 15-second excerpt is confused. You see a dude wearing an Inconvenience 19 mask. Another dude is wearing pajamas and slippers outside. There's another girl with a black t-shirt on showing a picture of this country in its pre-Lake of Fire form. The rapper herself is just screwed up and confused. She has her breast jangling all over the place. Some weird tattoo on her stomach. I think it says Vixen. I couldn't really tell. Every messed up thing about social media. Every messed up thing about social and cultural decay in Babylon is in this video. And I didn't even play the lyrics. You're just getting the visual imagery. So let's take a look at something else here. This is off of Twitter. A New York teacher who posted a threatening image with a gun also reportedly cross-dresses and wears wigs to teach. Imagine this person teaching your kids. A woman whose child goes to a secondary school in Stroud told us how a male teacher arrived last year saying he was non-binary and that kids should call him Foster, no Mr. or even MX. This year he has returned wearing a dress and told the school he now wants to be called Miss Foster. Deerfield Public School recently had a meeting which addressed controversy over middle school girls being forced to change in front of a boy who claimed to be a girl. The first speaker was a middle-aged transvestite who calls himself Sally. Sally complained that he never had the opportunity to experience female puberty. Sally is a bog standard pervert. This man, pretending to be a woman, is subbing at a elementary and middle school in Soddy Daisy, Tennessee, a very conservative rural area. Parents are not happy. A source tells me he's teaching kids to use she, he pronouns for him. Why are we letting cross-dressers teach little kids? So I think you get the point there. There's no need to harp on that stuff. Let's go into Genesis 19 and 13. For we will destroy this place, because the cry of them is waxing great before the face of Yahweh, Bahashem Yahweh Shai. And Yahweh hath sent us to destroy it. And we know that this is spiritually called Sodom and Egypt, as pursuant to Revelation 11 and 8. So when the angel spoke to Lot in Genesis chapter 19 and 12 and warned him to get his family out of there because they were sent to destroy this place, we know that this place is at the brink of destruction, because in Ecclesiastes 3 and 15, it reads, what is happening now has happened before, and what will happen in the future has happened before, because Allahayim makes the same things happen over and over again. So in remaining with this whole theme of social decay, social and cultural decay in Babylon, which is showing you how this country is on the brink of destruction, we start looking at sex and violence promoted in the media. Then you got the transformer and crisscross communities, in which they're really actually very small minorities in comparison to the total population, but they're being elevated in the school system. These type of things here are not by accident. This is all orchestrated. You have a ruling class here who wants to put a certain curriculum in these particular school systems to start getting your children young. So you have in some instances, whether this child comes from a 1 or 2 parent household, that's pretty much beside the point. You have parents who get up, go to work. Some parents are working 2 jobs because of just how hard things are getting out here economically. So you're thinking you're sending your kids to school, they're getting an education, they're really getting indoctrinated, and they're learning a curriculum of tolerance, how to just accept any and everybody, because of course, like they would say, Jesus loves everybody. So that's basically what they're putting out there in these school systems. And then once the kid comes home from school, parents are still not home, kid turns on the television, and there's all types of enchantments, sorceries coming through these, predictive programming type shows and stuff that they keep putting out there. You turn the television on and you have a same-sex couple on there tongue kissing each other, or it's just all types of things that they just put out there in front of these kids. And these are the enchantments, the sorceries that the elite are using. So if we look at Isaiah 47, I'm going to start from verse 5 and I'm going to read to verse 9. And this is pretty much, the Most High Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai. He's basically explaining what's going to come to the Chaldeans, or the ruling class elite, who set these curriculums and they use these enchantments and sorceries, which contribute to this type of social decay, which we're actually living in right now in Mystery Babylon. So Isaiah chapter 47, starting from verse 5. Sit thou silent, and get thee into darkness, O daughter of the Chaldeans, for thou shalt no more be called the lady of kingdoms. I was wroth with my people, I have polluted mine inheritance, and given them into thine hand. Thou didst shew them no mercy. Upon the ancient hast thou very heavily laid thy yoke, And thou sayest, I shall be a lady forever, so that thou didst not lay these things to thy heart, neither didst remember the latter end of it. Therefore hear now this, thou that art given to pleasures, that dwellest carelessly, that sayest in thine heart, I am, and none else beside me. I shall now sit as a widow, neither shall I know the loss of children. I'll reread that. I shall not sit as a widow, neither shall I know the loss of children. But these two things shall come to thee in a moment, in one day, the loss of children and widowhood. They shall come upon thee in their perfection, for the multitude of thy sorceries, and for the great abundance of thine enchantments. So the Most High basically lets us know here that, this is something that's going to eventually come to an end. The Most High is going to basically deal with this Hollywood culture that's basically, and it's not just Hollywood, it's the same thing goes on Broadway. These Broadway shows in like Times Square and stuff like that. It's just all types of debauchery and sorceries that come out of that type of stuff. The clothes that you wear, it's all enchantments. You wear a pair of Nikes that's actually, I believe that's like the Greek or Roman god of victory. I just actually, in my research, in the previous one of the videos I put up a little earlier, I came across, I didn't even know about the manifest destiny. That was their god, some pagan god named Columbia. I remember back in junior high school, I had a pair of, Columbia windbreakers and stuff like that. So these type of enchantments are everywhere. And you pretty much have to keep your eyes open for this stuff here. As we try to move closer and closer to Yahweh Bashem and Yahweh Shai, as we're trying to just completely separate ourselves from this kingdom, and we're trying to come up out of this, and so that even brings me to like these pagan holidays that are coming up. The so-called holiday season is coming up. Halloween, people dressing up like demons and dead people. And then you got so-called Thanksgiving, then Christmas, then New Year's Eve. And basically, the Most High warns us about this stuff. I'll go to Jeremiah 10. And I'll start from 3 and 4. Jeremiah chapter 10, verse 3 and 4. For the customs of the people are vain, for one cutteth a tree out of the forest, the work of the hands of the workmen with the axe. They deck it with silver and with gold. They fasten it with nails and with hammers, that it move not. Talking about that Christmas tree, which is stupid anyway, because you have a tree in your living room or wherever it is that people may put that tree in their homes. There's a tree inside of your house. So which this lets Babylon is confusion here. You're not supposed to have a tree inside of your house. So you're looking at a situation here in this particular country where the men are taken out of homes. The women are raising monsters. The women are damn near butt ass naked all over social media. There's most stuff all over the place. It's just, you can't turn the television on without seeing some same-sex stuff nowadays, which is pretty much why, and it's been like this. A lot of people don't believe me when I tell them, I really haven't watched television in maybe close to 15 years. There's been a few things here and there that I've watched. I think the last time that I really can remember tuning into a television show like on a weekly basis was the Boondocks. Sometime during when the Knicks got Carmelo Anthony, I used to watch Knick games all the time and stuff like that. But just actual watching stuff on television, I've pretty much stopped that. I haven't watched television in a while because it just doesn't interest me. It just really, to be honest, it just doesn't interest me at all. But my connection to all of this stuff is when I come on social media and I see people talking about these type of issues. I see, and I'm thinking to myself, and I been gave that stuff up. Before I came into the truth, actually, I had already stopped watching television. I can probably count the amount of movies I've seen, like actually gone to a movie theater, like in the past 10 or 15 years. I can probably count on two hands the amount of movies I've seen. I've just completely stopped all of that stuff, because of the stuff that they're putting in these television shows. It just didn't never sat right in my spirit. Eventually the spirit just told me to turn that off, stop watching it. But even the foods that we're consuming here, they all fall underneath social and cultural decay. Most people are not eating fruits and vegetables daily, or fasting often every few days or weeks. The increased consumption of fast foods and processed foods, then people eating seedless fruits or meat grown in laboratories. There's unclean water that we're drinking and showering in. You got to pay damn near $5 or $6 for a good bottle of mineral water. So like the apostles and bishops of Great Millstone have been bringing up recently, a lot lately, you're just better off making your own alkaline water to drink, and I've actually been doing that. I like mine, I make a lot of times if I have to go to the store and get a water, I'll do that, or I'll, make sure it's purified. You have a purifier in your home for drinking water, but I still would boil it anyway because I like mine hot. So I would put once that's boiled and good to go, put a little lemon juice or even lime juice or both. A lot of times, to be honest, I'll throw a piece of turmeric in there, little honey, cloves, things to that degree, some onion powder, garlic powder. Basically alkaline is going to be, it's metallic. So anything growing out of the ground, anything that's with the metals in them, if they're coming out of the ground, they're going to have potassium, sodium, zinc, iron. Those are the type of things, calcium. I think, I don't know if I said that or not. Once you put any of those metallic substances in your water becomes alkaline. So pretty much there's a host of different fruits and vegetables that will actually alkaline your water because it comes out of the ground. But you just want to make sure you're not going to the Stop and Shop or BJ's or something, and then you're getting like seedless fruits, and then think you're going to cut a piece of seedless watermelon and throw that in your water. It's not going to alkaline it. You have to make sure that this is actually natural. But I have a scripture here in my notes. Let me see what Isaiah 4:17. Isaiah 4:17 states, they may want bread and water and be astonished with one another and consume away for their iniquity. So basically, there's going to be, a famine here, which I think this famine has obviously already started. There is a shortage of just good, healthy, real, wholesome food that we can eat now. The pickings are getting real slim here in terms of like what we're eating that's healthy. So we are literally living in a decaying society, and it didn't take long for it to get like this. I mean, prior to the 1960s, this country really only had one major domestic issue, and that was the country was divided along racial lines of so-called black and white. Just those, that was your major domestic issue back then. Prior to the 60s, there were no major domestic issues regarding transformers in the crisscross community and stuff like that. Teaching in schools and even walking out in public. That stuff just wasn't accepted back then. There was no homelessness, no major homelessness issue like this, where you see someplace like LA, there's tent city and stuff like that, or a devaluing dollar, or mass school shootings. If there were mass school shootings prior to the 60s, like I said couple of seconds ago, that would have probably been whites going into, black schoolhouses and shooting those up. But the things, we didn't see like the sex and violence on television and in media, at least not to this present day level. There's always been, the cowboys and Indians type television shows, but there was variety. You could turn and watch something else. Same thing with the music. If you had your radio station on and you didn't like the music they were playing, you could just simply go to another station and there was actual variety there. So now it's not just as simple as just watching a different television station, because it's everywhere. Prior to the 60s, there weren't whole cities that were decrepit and run down. Yeah, there were ghost towns and decrepit buildings, but not whole major cities looking like Seattle, Washington, or Gary, Indiana. Prior to the 60s, you didn't have 3 or 4 block radiuses of people all doing the methylene. Whole demographics of women weren't coming out of their house scantily clad, or 1.5 million abortions annually. You can go on and on with this stuff here when you're talking about social decay in this particular Babylonian society. And the rapid pace at which Yahweh Bashem and Yahweh Shai is destroying this place it's a thing of beauty, and it should be celebrated. We should be clapping for this, because we know a more righteous kingdom is at hand, a more righteous government under the divine guidance and authority of Yahweh Bashem and Yahweh Shai. So I'll end it with Isaiah 9, 6 and 7. This is Isaiah 9, starting at verse 6, ending at verse 7. For unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulder. And his name shall be called Wonderful, Counselor, the Mighty God, the Everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace. Of the increase of his government and peace there shall be no end, upon the throne of David and upon his kingdom, to order it, and to establish it with judgment and with justice from henceforth, even forever. The zeal of Yahweh of hosts will perform this. I pray this video was edifying and reaches the ears it's supposed to reach. Shalom.